we watching for?
Well, I mean, this new sort of exchange deal, this exchange for new dollar notes is really in focus. The results of that are going to come late on Thursday, so probably we'll find out Friday the following day. But it's really critically important because ultimately Kaisa has such a big role. It's one of, like Evergrande, one of these very, very large borrowers in the offshore market, in the dollar bond market. It represents more than 5% of developers' debt in dollars. So any kind of restructuring or any kind of default could potentially throw out the sort of very fragile recovery that we've seen for China high-yield bonds. And of course, we know that just as sort of big institutional investors and investors like Allianz, T. Rowe, and Goldman are moving back into those bonds, we are facing sort of some of those risks as we go into December. And so Kaisa, of course, we have that exchange, and we also come to the end of the grace period for two notes sold by Evergrande as well.
Tell us a little bit about the broader credit markets in China, because the onshore market has remained pretty resilient.
Absolutely. I mean, throughout, in fact, the sort of debt crisis, the onshore market, which is, of course, much bigger, has stayed sort of much more stable. We haven't seen these sort of volatile swings that we've seen offshore. And ultimately, that does allow some liquidity to flow through into sort of the onshore part of businesses. But, of course, typically, it's very difficult to sort of transfer funds from your onshore business into your offshore and to remit funds to sort of stave off default there. So ultimately, many of these property firms that have for years relied on access to the dollar market will need to see yields coming down. With Omicron and all of this sort of various uncertainties that we see, we yield them back up above 20%. So some of that sort of hope and optimism that we may see the end of the sort of these prohibitively high borrowing costs, that unfortunately hasn't really happened. So I think the likelihood is we'll continue to see some firms like Kaisa and other stressed developers looking to possibly do more exchanges and possibly find other ways to sort of stave off their defaults. We may see, again, more asset sales as well.